All right, guys, let's continue on with Free to Choose. This is chapter 9, The Cure for Inflation. The Cure for Inflation. This one's called The Proximate Cause of Inflation. The Proximate Cause of Inflation. So, chapter 9, The Cure for Inflation. This little subchapter is The Proximate Cause of Inflation. Inflation is a disease, a dangerous and sometimes fatal disease, a disease that, if not checked in time, can destroy a society. Examples abound. Hyperinflations in Russia and Germany after World War I, when prices sometimes doubled and more than doubled from one day to the next, prepared the ground for communism. In the one country and Nazism in the other. The hyperinflation in China after World War II eased Chairman Mao's defeat of Chiang Kai-shek. Inflation in Brazil, where it reached about 100% a year in 1954, brought military government. A far more extreme inflation contributed to the overthrow of Allende in Chile in 1973 and of Isabel Perón in Argentina in 1976, followed in both countries by the assumption of power by a military junta. No government is willing to accept responsibility for producing inflation, even in less virulent degree. Government officials always find some excuse: greedy businessmen, grasping trade unions, spendthrift consumers, Arab sheiks, bad weather, or anything else that seems even remotely plausible. So like this is what they're saying. So government officials always find some excuse: greedy businessmen, grasping trade unions, spendthrift consumers. Anyway. No doubt businessmen are greedy, trade unions are grasping, consumers are spendthrifts, Arab sheiks have raised the price of oil, and weather is often bad. All these can produce high prices for individual items. All these can produce high prices for individual items. They cannot produce rising prices for goods in general. They can cause temporary ups or downs in the rate of inflation, but they cannot produce continuing inflation for one very simple reason. None of the alleged culprits possesses a printing press on which it can turn out those pieces of paper we carry in our pocketbooks. None of the alleged culprits possess a printing press on which it can turn out those pieces of paper we carry in our pockets. None can legally authorize a bookkeeper to make entries on ledgers that are the equivalent of those pieces of paper. Inflation is not a capitalist phenomena. Yugoslavia, a communist country, has experienced one of the most rapid rates of inflation of any country in Europe. Switzerland, a bastion of capitalism, one of the lowest. Neither is inflation a communist phenomenon. China had little inflation under Mao. Italy, the United Kingdom, Japan, and the United States, all largely capitalist countries, have experienced substantial inflation in the past decade. In the modern world, inflation is a printing press phenomena. Fucking bureaucrats, bro. They're fucking just spending money for trying to fix problems, and homeless is still going on, bro. Drugs, all that shit. The recognition that substantial inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomena is only the beginning of an understanding of the cause and cure of inflation. The more basic question is, why do modern governments increase the quantity of money too rapidly? Why do they produce inflation when they understand its potential for harm? Before turning to that question, it is worth dwelling a bit longer on the proposition that inflation is a monetary phenomenon. Despite the importance of that proposition, despite the extensive historical evidence supporting it, it is still widely denied, in large part because of the smokescreen with which governments try to conceal their own responsibility for inflation. If the quantity of goods and services available for purchase, output, for short, were to increase as rapidly as the quantity of money, prices would tend to be stable. Prices might even fail. I don't know. If the quantity of goods and services available for purchase, output for short, were to increase as rapidly as the quantity of money, prices would tend to be stable. There you go. Prices might even fall gradually as higher incomes led people to want to hold a larger fraction of their wealth in the form of money. Inflation occurs when the quantity of money rises appreciably more rapidly than output, like the people buy. And the more rapid the rise in the quantity of money per unit of output, the greater the rate of inflation. There is probably no other proposition in economics that is as well established as this one. Output is limited by the physical and human resources available and by the improvement in knowledge and capacity to use them. At best, output can grow only fairly slowly. Over the past century, output in the United States grew at the average rate of about 3% per year. Even at the height of the rapid growth of Japan after World War II, output grew about 10% per year. The quantity of commodity money is subject to similar physical limits, though, as the examples of tobacco, precious metals from the New World, and gold in the 19th century illustrate, commodity money has at times grown far more rapidly than output in general. Modern forms of money, paper and bookkeeping entries, are subject to no physical limits. The nominal quantity, that is, the number of dollars, pounds, marks, or other monetary units, can grow at any rate and at times has grown at fantastic rates. During the German hyperinflation after World War I, for example, hand-to-hand money grew at the average rate of more than 300% a month for more than a year, and so did prices. During the Hungarian hyperinflation after World War II, hand-to-hand money rose at the average rate of more than 12,000% per month for a year, and prices at the even higher rate of nearly 20,000% a month. During the far more moderate inflation in the United States during 1969 to 1979, the quantity of money rose at the average rate of 9% per year and prices at the average rate of 7% per year. The difference of 2 percentage points reflects the 2.8% average rate of growth of output over the same decade. As these examples show, what happens to the quantity of money tends to dwarf what happens to output. Hence, our reference to inflation as a monetary phenomena. Without adding any qualification about output, anyway, these examples also show that there was not a precise one-on-one correspondence between the rate of monetary growth and the rate of inflation. However, to our knowledge, there was no example in history of a substantial inflation that lasted more than a brief time that was not accompanied by a roughly correspondingly rapid increase in the quantity of money. However, to our knowledge, there was no example in history of a substantial inflation that lasted for more than a brief time that was not accompanied by a roughly correspondingly rapid increase in the quantity of money, and no example of a rapid increase in the quantity of money that was not accompanied by roughly correspondingly substantial inflation. A few charts, figure 1 through 5, show the persistence of this relation in recent years. The solid line on each chart is the quantity of money per unit of output for the country in question year by year from 1964 through 1977. The other line is the Consumer Price Index, CPI. In order to make the two series comparable, both have been expressed as percentages of their average values over the period as a whole. 1964 through 1990, or 1964 through 1977 equals 100 for both lines. I don't know how to read it. The two lines necessarily have the same average level, but there is nothing in the arithmetic that requires the two lines to be the same for any single year. The two lines for the United States on figure 1 are almost distinguishable, as the remaining figures show. That is not special to the United States, though the two lines differ more for some of the other countries than they do for the United States. For every country, the two lines are remarkably similar. The different countries experience very different rates of monetary growth. In every case, that difference was matched by a different rate of inflation. Brazil is the most extreme. It experienced more rapid monetary growth than any of the others, and also more rapid inflation. Which causes which? Does the quantity of money grow rapidly because prices increase rapidly? or vice versa. One clue is that on most of the charts, the number plotted for the quantity of money is for a year ending 6 months earlier than the year to which the matching price index corresponds. More decisive evidence is provided by examination of the institutional arrangements that determine the quantity of money in these countries and by a large number of historical episodes in which it is crystal clear which is cause and which is effect. One dramatic example comes from the American Civil War. The South financed the war largely by the printing press, in the process producing an inflation that averaged 10% a month from October 1861 to March 1864. In an attempt to stem the inflation, the Confederacy enacted a monetary reform. In May 1864, the currency reform took hold and the stock of money was reduced. Dramatically, the general price index dropped. In spite of invading Union armies, the impending military defeat, the reduction in foreign trade, the disorganized government, and the low morale of the Confederate Army reducing the stock of money had a more significant effect on prices than these powerful forces. So let's see these money and prices. So vertical scale, logarithmic. Consumer price index, quantity of money per output. That's US. So US is not that bad. Germany, Japan. I don't know how to read this, guys. So it's like, I could just show you the charts if you guys want to see. It's fucking charts I don't know how to read. See? One, United States. Oh, fucking paper. And then right here we have Germany. And we have Japan. We have United Kingdom, Brazil. There's like a lot of money being printed, I guess. So these charts dispose of many widely held explanations of inflation. Unions are a favorite whipping boy. They are accused of using their monopoly power to force up wages, which drive up costs, which drive up prices. But then how is it that the charts for Japan, where unions are of trivial importance, and for Brazil, where they exist only at the sufferance and under the close control of the government, show the same relation as the charts for the United Kingdom, where unions are stronger than in any of the other nations, and for Germany and the United States, where unions have considerable strength? Unions may provide useful services for their members. They may also do a great deal of harm by limiting employment opportunities for others, but they do not produce inflation. Wage increases in excess of increases in productivity are a result of inflation rather than a cause. So wage increases in excess of increases in productivity are a result of inflation rather than a cause. Similarly, the businessmen do not cause inflation. The rise in the prices they charge is a result of a reflection of other forces. Businessmen are surely no more greedy in countries that have experienced much inflation than in countries that have experienced little. No more greedy at one period than another. Why then is inflation so much greater in some places and at some times than in other places and at other times? Why then is inflation so much greater in some places and at some times than in other places and at other times? Another favorite explanation of inflation, particularly among government officials seeking to shift blame, is that it is imported from abroad. That explanation was often correct when the currencies of the major countries were linked through a gold standard. Inflation was then an international phenomenon because many countries used the same commodity as money, and anything that made the quantity of that commodity money grow more rapidly affected them all. But it clearly is not correct for recent years. If it were, how could the rates of inflation be so different in different countries? Japan and the United Kingdom experienced inflation at the rate of 30% or more a year in the early 1970s, when inflation in the United States was around 10%. And in Germany under 5%. Inflation is a worldwide phenomenon in the sense that it occurs in many countries at the same time, just as high government spending and large government deficits are worldwide phenomena. But inflation is not an international phenomenon in the sense that each country separately lacks the ability to control its own inflation, just as high government spending and large government deficits are not produced by forces outside each country's control. Low productivity is another favorite explanation for inflation. Yet consider Brazil. It has experienced one of the most rapid rates of growth in output in the world and also one of the highest rates of inflation. True enough, what matters for inflation is the quantity of money per unit of output. But as we have noted, as a practical matter, changes in output are dwarfed by changes in the quantity of money. Nothing is more important for the long run economic welfare of a country than improving productivity. If productivity grows at 3.5% per year, output doubles in 20 years. At 5% per year in 14 years, quite a difference, but productivity is a bit player for inflation. Money is center stage. What about Arab sheiks and OPEC? They have imposed heavy costs on us. The sharp rise in the price of oil lowered the quantity of goods and services that was available for us to use because we had to export more abroad to pay for oil. The reduction in output raised the price level, but that was a once-for-all effect. It did not produce any longer lasting effect on the rate of inflation from that higher price level. In the 5 years after the 1973 oil shock, inflation in both Germany and Japan declined. In Germany from about 7% a year to less than 5%, in Japan from over 30% to less than 5%. In the United States, inflation peaked a year after the oil shock at about 12%, declined to 5% in 1976, and then rose to over 13% in 1979. Can these very different experiences be explained by an oil shock that was common to all countries? Germany and Japan are 100% dependent on imported oil. Yet they have done better at cutting inflation than the United States, which is only 50% dependent, or than the United Kingdom, which has become a major producer of oil. We return to our basic proposition. Inflation is primarily a monetary phenomena produced by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in output. Like than what you're actually making. So you're printing more money than like what you even have available to buy. Like money's becoming surplus, so the value's going down. The behavior of the quantity of money is a senior partner, of output the junior partner. The behavior of the quantity of money is the senior partner, of output the junior partner. Many phenomena can produce temporary fluctuations in the rate of inflation, but they can have lasting effects only insofar as they affect the rate of monetary growth. So inflation is primarily a monetary phenomena produced by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in outputs. So where's the money going, right? Anyway, peace.